Hey everybody, we're back. This is us. It's Owlbear Odysseys. We're going to be discussing some classes, or not classes. That's not what we're discussing.
Oh
It's
no!
races. It's okay. That was on purpose. We're discussing races today. Uh, Not racist, but we're talking about the PHB races. As I said, we
One of
are
these
the
days we'll get a good
Owlbears.
intro.
No, never. Literally never. I am Shane, as you may or may not know. And I can actually do this, Marshall, because I see the actual layout. That is Marshall. Marshall, say hi.
Oh, that's weird. I'm over here on
No.
my screen for you.
Stop
I'm
referring to your own
Marshall.
layout, Marshall.
Okay, well, that one over there is Marshall. Feel free to ignore him or don't. That's up to you. And that one over there, that one is JT.
Hi, I'm JT. The last 3 times that we've recorded, Marshall has referred to his own layout, which is not the one that you're seeing. And he continues to commit to this just really weird choice that he's making, and I don't understand it. It's not necessarily like unhinged as much as it's just nonsensical that he keeps doing this.
It's true.
That's why I'm
And
kept around.
at least this
Anyway, hi, I'm
recording
JT.
this recording may have been my fault. I brought it up, but that's because mine is correct. All right.
That's okay.
Without further adu, let's just hop in, guys. You ready
Actually,
to
I
hop
want to
in?
give a little bit of further ado.
Oh, there's
Shane, do you
further
want to
ado.
explain why we're just doing the PHB races today?
Oh, yeah, I can do that. I should probably also describe like what the metrics we're using is, or are. Yeah, so we're doing PHP races today. We are talking about the current version of these races. It's we want to cover all of the races, but we don't want to make a video where we go through what is it, like 50 races or something? Probably more.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So instead, we're cutting it into. I believe the plan is currently 3 videos. First will be the PHP races, and then we're gonna do the updated Morning Canaan's book that came out somewhat recently, because that's like 33 in its own. We're doing that one, and then we're just kind of doing everything that's left after those 2 big ones.
Yep.
And we're talking about. I mean, we're going to be ranking them. We're using good old tier maker. We're going to be talking about, mechanically how good they are, but also a little bit about, maybe how we feel about them. Will we like them, or we don't like them? Maybe the lore is cool. Maybe we're nostalgic because the first character we played was this race.
Yeah, it's mostly mechanics, but everything else is factored in. We're also, like Shane said, we're using the most modern versions of these, so we're also using the rule that you can add to whichever stats you want. So for the most part, we won't be factoring in the specific ability score increases that the races get, with a couple of exceptions that we'll get to when we get to them.
And we're also going to be omitting the special not actual sub races, but the races that are.
Yeah, we're not considering sub races that later became their own races. So we're not going to talk about Sea Elf here because it'll be discussed in Morning Canaan.
Yep.
All right, is that all of the further ado that we had?
I think that's all the ado.
All right, with no more ado, that just feels wrong saying. We're gonna pop on over here where everybody can see our good old tier maker. We're gonna start with Dragonborn. Marshall, you're on the top on this video format. So
Okay.
why don't you tell us what you think about Dragonborn?
So Dragonborns are real awesome, especially after the changes that they made with their breath weapons. That they can actually have their one of their attack actions as their breath weapon instead of their whole action being their breath weapon. So martial fighters actually get to do a lot more as a Dragonborn, which is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's also now the Gym Dragonborn, which are just awesome. It gives Dragonborn a huge variety of being able to be resistant to any type of damage, whatever you want to be resistant to. And if you're choosing to play something like Bear Totem Barbarian, you could be resistant to everything with just a Dragonborn if you chose Amethyst Gym Dragon. But then you also get other cool features like the Psionic Mind, Gym Flight, or other things like that. It's awesome. They also now have dark vision. I did not know that until JT told me about that a little bit ago. I completely forgot about
Well,
it.
Or
specifically,
some sub races can have dark
Some,
vision.
yeah,
2 of them.
you get the option to have
Uh,
dark vision, but it replaces other things.
yeah.
Mhm.
So they have a lot more versatility now, and I think they're just a lot better than what they used to be. They were still good before, but I think they're better than what they used to be. Their breath weapon did take a little bit of a hit in damage for a little bit, but it still is better overall in the end, I think.
Mhm.
All right, JT, why don't you, if you've got something to add about your opinion, and then why don't you kind of like, take that into giving us our first, your opinion of where we should place it, and then we'll talk about that. We'll get
Yeah,
move
well,
into ranking it.
yeah, well, there's a little bit of controversy with this one between Shane and I specifically. Um, I think we're both on the same table. Like, it's a very good race, but basically, all of the PHB races are very consistent. None of them are exceptional. None of them are terrible, and so the subtle differences between them have to be given more weight to properly do a tier list. Like Marshall said, Dragonborns are just very versatile. No single Dragonborn build will have it all, but you can get resistance to any damage type in the game. You can get dark vision, you can get flight, all the things he mentioned, and more. In my opinion, that versatility alone for a race puts it at S tier. I would say probably like low S tier compared to races that will come later. Uh, but if not, at least high A, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you've actually kind of swayed me a little bit. At least for this video, I don't know that I necessarily want to be thinking about like comparing it to later races.
Mhm.
Like,
Yep.
I think if we were looking at the full list and everything was up there, I probably wouldn't be good with putting Dragonborn in S. But
Yeah.
at least looking at this list, it's kind of thinking about it. It's like, yeah, it probably should be S. Like overall, it would be low S
Mhm.
if it made it into S. But I think for this list, I'm cool with S.
Yeah. If I can throw in another thing, Dragonborns just have rule of cool behind them because who doesn't want to be a dragon? I mean, it's half the name of the game.
Yeah, I'm
Yep.
waiting for the
So, I mean,
Dungeonborn, but
taking mechanics out of it entirely, being a dragon is just cooler than being an elf to most people.
I think I agree. I do agree with JT that I think they're S tier, but I also agree with Shane comparatively to other races. When we get to the other later races, then I don't think they're S tier comparatively, but with just the uh, original 9, I definitely think they're S tier.
At best, they are low S.
all right. So we're actually kind of
Starting off good.
agreed there. That doesn't seem right. We'll fix that at some point, I'm sure. JT, why don't you start us off with a dwarf this time?
Dwarves, I'm not super impressed with them, if I'm being perfectly honest. They have like the general benefit a lot of D&D races is that they're very long lived. But they also have a base walking speed of 25, which is not fun to deal with. Their dwarven resilience is just against poison, which is not any resistance is better than no resistance, but it's not a great one to have. I just feel like a lot of dwarf abilities are just a little subpar. Now, again, if we take into account subclasses or subraces, Hill Dwarf, the Dwarven Toughness, to get an extra hit point for every level, that's pretty cool. That's useful. I mean, that's half of the tough feat. But I'm not super impressed with dwarves as a whole. I would probably put them in B.
I kind of agree with you. I don't have a lot to add. I think that comparatively to these other races, and especially comparatively to later races, the dwarf is kind of, I hate saying like basic. Like it's not bad. It's not, it's not garbage. It's got a few good things, but it's kind of middle of the road. Did you said B?
I said B.
I think I might argue C for the same reason that I was willing to go up to S for Dragonborn. In that, comparatively for this list, I would say it probably deserves a B, but I think I might put it in C. The other thing I was gonna mention, you brought up one of the subraces. The other subrace is also good. because it gives you proficiency in light and medium armor.
Yeah.
So like that's obviously great for any type of caster who wants to be a little bit better protected.
Play a dwarf wizard.
Yeah, a dwizzard. The thing I also wanted to say is like the dwarven combat training. They just naturally get. I don't remember exactly which weapons it is. I think it's like battle axe and axe and something else. Proficiency. Battle axe, hand axe, light hammer, and warhammer. That's almost never going to help you, right? Like either you're playing something that already gets that, or you're not playing something that wants to use that.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a downside to some of those like extra martial weapon benefits, because most of the time if you're not using a class that uses them, then you're not going to use that anyway, so it's like, why even? It sucks that dwarves only have really 2 subclasses. They do have a third one technically with the mark of warding, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, but that's getting into Eberron. So,
which we don't do on this channel.
My opinion, because of how basic they feel to me, I really wish dwarves were better. I think high C.
Let me make one more pitch, and if this doesn't change y'all's opinions, I'm fine with it. But this is something that I think is worth saying. There are certain races that just feel inextricably tied into the DNA of this game. I don't like. Granted, you can make whatever setting you want, but a traditional fantasy setting, thanks Tolkien, doesn't feel right without dwarves. Dwarves and elves really are, to me, like, they have to exist in classical fantasy for it to be classical fantasy.
Yeah, they're like the ubiquitous like fantasy races.
And so I feel like for how tied they are to the genre of fantasy in general and D&D specifically, I feel like they earn B on that. But if y'all disagree, I'm fine with that.
I see where you're coming from. I see your point. I get that. But also it's like it's not enough to sway me personally. And it's also kind of a thing of like they are so ubiquitous. They're such a staple, and it does kind of stink that they're not better than they are.
That's where I'm at. I think they should have more subclasses or more benefits to them because they are so tied into fantasy, but they don't.
So this is a call out, Watsy. Help dwarves.
That's true.
It's dwarves.
The new dwerger is cool. We'll get to it later. I don't need to talk about it now. Yeah, I think JT's been overruled. We're putting it into... It is a high C. If there were other things in there, it would be near the top. Call us out in the comments if you think JT and Dwarf were slighted. Either way, that's where it is. We're going to talk about the other race we agreed was the typical staple fantasy race. It's time for Elf. I want to put Elf high. I do. I really want to. But the current... this version of Elf... This one doesn't have a ton going for it. Like, it's got good stuff. It's not bad. But I think, the trance is great, but something that I was talking to these guys earlier about, this elf, the trance, the wording says the elves remain semi-conscious while they trance. Whereas the newer elves... the Mordenkainen's elves, they say that you remain conscious, and it's which is a that's a definite thing. I don't think there are semi-conscious mechanics, so that's just kind of not great. It'd be like, what does this mean?
Well, yeah. So trance. I mean, first off, trance is a good feature. Getting to cut your long rest in half is useful regardless. I feel like based on the rules that we've come up with, that sub-races that become races later aren't considered, elves really get slighted because they've had so many of their sub-races become full races. Those are the rules that we have arbitrarily agreed upon, and we will stick to them. And it makes elves pretty vanilla. The sub-races that you're left with, I mean, has anyone ever really gotten excited about Wood Elf? It's
excuse you.
An extra 5 feet of movement.
What elves are fun?
I'm not saying that they're not fun. They're not bad. It's not something that like Like no one's going crazy for wood elves.
You're gonna anger our anyone watching who's a NADPOD Campaign 1 fan, because you're
I'm a
coming at
NADPOD
Moonshine
Campaign
right
1
now.
fan too. But elves, in my opinion at least, are even more tied to fantasy than dwarves are. And I feel like that's worked against them in this case specifically because they have so few subraces left. If I had to slot them in right now, I would probably put them high B, mid to high B.
I agree with mid B. I think the best subrace is specifically High Elf, in my opinion, because who doesn't love an extra cantrip? But otherwise, I don't think elves are overall that good, other than the trance and that extra cantrip.
High Elf was my first character, by the way. Well, not my first, but it was the first one that I made myself.
I think we're pretty much agreed. I didn't say anything for me yet, but I'm good with B. It's like, my gut tells me to put it in A, but looking at it, it doesn't deserve it. So
other versions of Elf will probably get into A.
Yeah, well, there's a couple probably going to get into S. One thing that I did want to mention before we move on from Elf is both High Elf and Wood Elf, and I think maybe a couple of the other like weird specific ones, grant proficiency with longbows, which isn't crazy, but it is good for, say, a rogue who typically only gets short bow and not a longbow.
Better than a hand axe.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, better than getting hand axe proficiency. All right, so we're on to gnome. I think that means it's time for Marshall to start us off. Tell us about gnomes.
I like gnomes. I like any race that has extended age. I like small races are fun, but it does hurt to have a 25-foot movement speed. Gnome cunning is pretty good. Having advantage on all of your soft stats, not bad.
Against magic.
Really good. They only have, I believe, 2 or 3 subclasses. Not sub races. 3. Okay, it is 3. I think they're fun overall. I don't think that they're going to be S tier or A tier. I think B and I would say lower than Elf in my opinion. I don't have too much to say on them.
JT, what are you thinking?
I love gnomes. I said one of my first characters ever was an elf. The first character I played in a long-term campaign was a deep gnome, who I think has been commandeered by Mordenkainen's, but he was still a gnome. I think that gnome cunning is a phenomenal ability for a race to just have advantage on all of your soft stat saves against magic effects. But I also want to call attention to the rock gnome tinker ability. Regardless of if that's ever really going to be good in combat, it's not. It's mechanically really cool, or it's flavor-wise really cool. I don't think I can argue that they would go above Elf, even though purely subjectively, just because of my history with Gnome, they are above Elf to me. So I can agree with putting them in low B, but I love Gnomes.
So I'm going to come in here and be a little different.
Gnomes can all die.
No, I was actually I was leaning towards low A. I'm good coming down to B. I was leaning towards low A just because that gnome cunning, it is just really good. It does also lead to the common experience where you have a gnome player and every time you make them make a save that is one of the soft stats, it always has the immediate question: is it magical? I think it's a very good defensive ability. One of the, it leads to a couple of fun builds. You could just, play a paladin, already be adding your charisma modifier to it, and also getting advantage on things. Or the fun build is to go barbarian, and then, you get dex saving throw advantage. And when you're raging, you get strength saving throw advantage. And so you basically have advantage on all the saves except for con.
I think I actually do change my mind on where I said first below Elf. I think that I could agree with low A because I was comparing Gnome Cunning to Satyr's ability of being able to be resistant.
Their magic resistance.
Magical abilities. Yeah.
I was
I'll
willing
take
to
it gladly.
compromise for high B, but it sounds like we're slipping into low A here. JT, if you wanted there, you got to argue for it, man. All right, so JT, you're gonna start us off about half elf.
I really don't know for half elf. I'm gonna be perfectly honest. It's another one that's kind of underwhelming to me. I feel like half elves are fine. Like I can't even come up with an opinion on them. They're just okay. All of your half elf versatility that changes based on your heritage, most of those are good enough. Depending on your build, getting the drow magic, getting to cast fairy fire once per long rest could be very good early game. I would probably put half elf below elf personally in B.
I disagree there. I think half elves do automatically go higher than elf because they are one of the ones that do have a different ASI. The two into one of your ability scores and then 2+1s. That's really good already to start off. That's one of the few races that gives that, where you can actually hit more than just 2 of your stats. But then you also get other abilities, like skill versatility. You get 2 skills right off the bat, whereas most typically give you 1 and then a forced one based on that race.
The skill versatility, does that apply to any of them, or is that another that you can choose?
That might be one you can choose. I could
Because
be wrong
it is on the list with half elf versatility.
Oh yes, it does get changed if you change it for something else.
It does also bear really considering that one of the Tasha's rules, which we were saying are included, is that you can replace any forced skills. Like if a race tells you get perception, you can change that to whatever you want. Mm-hmm. Although, why would you not want perception?
But you don't want to mess with the ASI difference because the half elf ASI is better.
So
as long as you're playing something that wants charisma, then yeah.
I was gonna say this is a good place to clarify because Marshall, you said you get 2 in one skill and 1 in any other 2. That's not fully true. You get 2 in charisma and 1 to any other 2. So it's not across the board. Like it's not versatile in that 2-point upgrade. It has to be a class that wants the charisma.
Yeah, but that does hit. I mean, I'm not going to do the math real quick, but what, like nearly half of them, because there's more charisma casters than the other casters.
That's why I lean to above elf.
So you're saying above elf, JT? Where were you saying? Below elf?
I said below elf. I'm kind of on the fence at this point.
I played a warlock half elf, and charisma. I benefited from the ASIs, and it was fun. I do think I would put it below elf. It's close, but I think it is kind of elf light in most cases. Mm-hmm. The ASI is nice, but it also it depends on what you want to play.
I've been convinced by your ASI argument, but to me that puts it on par with elf. So my opinion becomes kind of useless between you two.
All right, well you can't do that.
But you know what?
We'll split the diff and give it to Marshall.
I was going to say,
we'll let him win this one.
If you think about the Tasha's rule for stats, is that you get +1 in 2 stats of your choice, right?
No, it's +2 in one, +1 in the other,
+1,
or 3 +1.
Yeah, I think I'll put it above elf. I think I'll agree with Marshall on this one, even though to me the boringness of the race just puts it like completely flush with elf.
It is one of the most bland races in my opinion. I can agree with that.
But it's not the most bland. We'll get to that in a minute.
Got him. So half orc. Goody, I get to start with this one. The character that JT was referencing earlier, the gnome character, you may or may not have heard these characters before because they're from our first game with Marshall. But I played a half-orc in that same game, that same first long campaign that we were part of. And he was great. He was a fun time. So I'm going to say I really love them. I think they're going to go pretty high. I'm going to make perhaps the bold statement that they also belong in S. Relentless Endurance, when you reduce to 0 hit points but not killed outright, you can drop to 1 hit point instead, once per long rest. Mm-hmm. No matter what you're playing, that's good. That's Death Ward, which is a 4th level spell. I mean, you don't get the benefit of not being able to be killed outright. But that is essentially a 4th level spell as a racial ability from level 1. Mm-hmm. And combining that with savage attacks, that's basically the barbarian brutocritical, where you just get to roll an extra damage dice when you crit with a melee weapon.
Yeah.
And so if you're kind of thinking about, any build, then half orc is good, just because relentless endurance is very good.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're thinking about a melee fighter, using fighter not to mean the class, fighter as melee build, then those two, having both of those, very good. Also, you have dark vision, which is always good. My character was a monk, and I know that I absolutely used both of these, and they were both amazing. There were probably a few combats where, I can't say relentless endurance was like the difference between us winning and losing, but when it's the difference between me getting another full turn or just being down, it makes a big difference.
I remember specifically 2 combats where it saved y'all in, where you just survived, and then I forgot who. I think it was actually JT's character that healed you with some temp HP, and then you just kept wailing on somebody, and then they died. I was like, well, cool. Relentless
If y'all have watched any of Heartwood Heist, the campaign that we're running right now, you might be familiar with the fact that Marshall, I'm not going to say you don't know how to balance encounters, because I don't think that's true. But Marshall tends to make encounters on the low side of impossible. He's improved since that campaign. He tried to murder us every session that campaign. And so any ability like that, like, we had to try hard to survive, which did make it fun. Mm-hmm. But yeah, relentless endurance made the difference a couple of times.
I do think that half-orcs are good overall. I do think they are either very high A tier or bottom S tier, mainly because of relentless endurance, and then savage attacks kind of just adds to it. Savage attacks is really good though, especially if you're thinking like fighter, monk, anything like that. But yeah, that's why I think S tier for them.
JT, you gonna be the wet blanket?
No, I'll give it S tier as well.
All right, Marshall, either continue us about half orc or get us started on halfling.
Let's just go right into it. Lucky is
Lucky.
Lucky. The thing is, I don't want so many things to be S tier because Lucky is just automatically S tier. It's just re-roll your die, and it's not once per long rest. It's just whenever you roll a 1. Whenever you roll a 1 on a d20, on an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw, you can re-roll it, but you have to use the new roll. Most of the time, almost all the time, you're not going to roll a 1 again, unless you're Shane, or someone like Shane.
Yeah, it takes the chances of rolling a nat 1 from 1 in 20 to 1 in 400.
Which is just, that's a big difference. Lucky just demolishes it being in any other category. That's why I think it goes to top S tier because of Lucky. But that's because of just the power building of it for anyone who struggles with rolling, who's very unlucky. But I could be convinced it'd be a little bit lower. But I don't want so many things in S tier a little bit. But that's
top of S is a take.
It's just how it goes. And then Halfling Nimbleness is also kind of cool. You can move through spaces of any creature that is a size larger than yours.
Well, it lets you move through an unwilling creature's space, which is something that nobody else gets.
Yeah.
As far as I know. So that is neat.
Yeah.
It's neat.
All right, JT, do you want to rebuke him or do you want me to?
I want you to take it next.
Okay. I'm messing with you, but also, I'll just start off saying, I say this goes in A tier below Gnome, which is a little different from top of S tier. Here's the thing. Lucky is amazing. There's 2 things I can say about that. One is that it is not a making something better ability. It is making you not as bad. It's taking away ability to go to do bad things, which can make you better. but it's more of a defensive thing than an offensive thing, which isn't necessarily bad, but it is just something to consider. The other thing is halflings come with, 3 little negatives. One being just that they don't have dark vision, which isn't, the worst thing in the world. The second thing is the 25-foot walking speed, which also dwarves get, but it's still bad.
And gnomes.
Yeah.
And gnomes.
And they are small, which I think gnomes are small too, but I don't think dwarves are. Dwarves are medium, I think. Maybe they're not. I don't remember. But anyway, it's those things all combined that it like
dwarves are medium.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Because they're so stout.
Yeah. So it's the thing that kind of arguably balances out. Lucky is still good no matter what. Right? Like Lucky's always going to be good. But there's more negatives that go with it. Like Brave is nice, have advantage on saving throws against being frightened. That's nice. It's not going to win you any awards, So I think halflings are very good, especially if you're someone who rolls a lot of nat ones. But my placement for them is low A, low to mid A. JT?
I agree entirely. I put them below Gnome in A because they are riding on the merits of Lucky. Nimble is kind of neat, but I don't see it making the difference. Brave is very situational. Even their subrace abilities are just fine. Lucky is the only ability that they have that I would say is a good ability. Nimble is an okay ability. Lucky is Lucky is a very good ability, but I can't put them at top of S off of one good ability.
That's fair.
To me, I agree with Shane. They go below Gnome.
It's shocking to be below Gnome, in my opinion. I think that they're above
Well, that's because you don't
Gnome.
respect gnomes.
That's fair. I don't. I think
everybody in the
a
comments call Marshall out for being racist toward gnomes.
Satyrs are better. I love satyrs. I'm biased. But yeah,
satyrs came out later, so they're better because WotC doesn't know how to make their races backwards compatible.
That's very true. But halflings, just Lucky, I think is really good. I think that's better than what Gnome gives of the resistance. But I can concede and say they're below Gnome.
Well, looks like you're gonna have to.
I was gonna say I would have been willing to go above Gnome, but I wasn't going into S. But
that's fair.
But you said it first, so we're gonna put them below Gnome. Everybody, tell us if we're wrong, or agree with us. Tell Marshall he's dumb. Please be nice.
Or tell me I'm right.
So I'm doing human.
You're doing human. Human.
Here's the thing.
Have fun.
I don't hate humans at all. Some of my best friends are human. It's just boring. I mean, are you really gonna have the option to play an elephant man or a dragonborn or any of the other? You can play a robot gnome and you're gonna go with human. One of the jokes in the D&D community is that human is the NPC choice. Like that's NPC behavior to pick them. I don't fully agree with that, but I also just don't think they have anything that's that exceptional. They are, if you take standard human, you just get +1 to every ability score, which is good for some builds, but like most of the time that's not. I mean, like most of the time taking that instead of the other things you can get is questionable. But if you go with variant human, it's all about versatility. You can build it in whatever way you want. You get proficiency in any skill, which Tasha's kind of lets you do anyway now. You get any feat of your choice, which is very good to start with a feat. You get to put your ability scores anywhere, which Tasha's lets you do anyway now.
But it's also only 2 + 1s.
Right. Variant human has been, all of the versatility that it provides has been made pretty much standard at this point. So all you're really getting from it is a feat. I'd still put them in B. My choice would be below elf.
Yeah, I'm gonna hop in here as well because and say, if you'll allow me to generalize, and even if you won't, there's two reasons to pick human. One is because you're building your first character and you're scared you're not going to know how to do it, and human seems easy because it is. And the second one is because you want to defeat.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's it.
Yep.
You go very human because I want a defeat to start. And I think JT did a good job talking about the pros and cons involved there. I think in my mind I would put it in B. I would probably say high B just because getting a feat like as a race,
So
I think they're still the only one that does that, and it is just very good. I know you can get them with some backgrounds now, but as a race,
yeah, I was thinking.
I think they're the only option to take one.
It is nice.
So my placement because of that would be high B, arguably low A, high B.
It's just there's so many feats, and they're just going to keep
are.
making feats, and it doesn't limit you to a certain amount of feats like in other games. That I don't think that they're better than halflings still. Overall,
No.
partly because of the blandness of them. That's what we were kind of talking about, blandness. I think that they're above elf in my opinion, but not better than half elf.
The feat
but
is good. Like getting a
it's
feat,
so good.
that is a good ability. I keep going back to the fact that, and you can take this one of two ways, which I'll briefly unpack. I keep going back to the fact that every other benefit that human gives you, WotC later in Tasha's just decided, oh, that's standard. And so you can
Yeah.
either think, oh, so humans were always good enough that WotC later decided like everyone should get those benefits. Like those are just good. Or WotC really doesn't respect their own race that they made here. They really hate human enough that they are going to ruin everything else that it gets. You can take that however you want. I don't think I can put it in A off the back of a feat alone, because comparing it to halfling, lucky is not something you can get from somewhere else. You can get whatever feat you were going to get, you can get at level 4. And that doesn't take away the greatness of getting a feat from level 1. It just, I don't know. I would be okay with B wherever y'all want to put it.
So to me, I would put it above. I would put it in the high B because I
I'm
think
fine
the
with
feat
that.
versatility but has just great potential. So are you saying you're good with that, Marshall?
Yeah, I'm good with high B. The thing that we've already seen, and we'll see in our later videos, is like the upward trend of all the races and how they just keep getting better. The way WotC is going, it seems like the feat thing will also kind of be null and void later anyway, because I feel like all classes, or I mean all races, will get a feat for something, or
I wouldn't be
background,
shocked if they
things
eventually did that.
I feel like it's happening. So, like, once that happens, I think
At which point
are-
humans go to F.
All right, we're gonna slide it
If-
in here.
If WotC ever does that, y'all are going to see another video come out of us just moving human from B to F. That's going to be the entire video.
Yep.
So we're gonna move on. That was our human
Yep.
take. What we have left is Tiefling. First of all, this is the original Edge character. Back when you just had the PHB, you knew who was edgy by who played the Tiefling.
Tiefling Warlock.
Yeah. But here's the thing. They get fire resistance, which, I mean, is very common for, like, monsters and stuff. But it is also just pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, fireball, firebolt. Fire resistance is a good thing to have. And they
The only one
get...
that gets resistance is Dragonborn.
Yeah. And they get... typically, they get some spells, which are, fun little... It's nice to have some fire spells. Hellish Rebuke as a racial thing, that's very fun. But there's another thing I have to say, which is the variants. They're the only ones... I think Dragonborn we said can fly with one specific subrace. You can get wings with the tiefling, which are very good things to have. I don't want to get labeled as the edgelord here, but I think they're going to go pretty high. I'm thinking in A, and I'm uncertain of where in A. What are you thinking, Marshall? I see that face you're making. What are you thinking?
I could agree with that. With the wings alone, I think they're really good. Hellish Rebuke, such a good spell, and getting that as a racial thing, that's awesome. And I believe they get 3 spells in total, right?
Yeah, it's like Burning Hands, Thaumaturgy, and Hellish Rebuke, right? And there's also...
No, it's Thaumaturgy, Hellish Rebuke, and Darkness for Infernal Legacy.
Well, there's another option. There's a couple of other options.
Other ones.
It depends on the bloodline you go with.
Yeah, that's true.
But not if you get wings.
Yeah. The Infernal Legacy is the base one.
Yeah, if you get wings, you don't have the spells, which stinks but makes sense.
Yeah. It's the only race in the original 9 that gets leveled spells. Unless we're including the mark tattoos from Eberron.
We're not.
Well,
okay.
Some of the races at least get to like add spells to spell lists, but I don't think they get like erasal spells. Maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So in that, I say middle of A right now, between Gnome and Halfling. But because of flight, that's the only one that has flying other than Dragonborn. I think high A. I'm between high A and mid A. I don't think they're below Halfling.
Drow get Fairy Fire and Darkness.
Oh, my bad.
So we were wrong about that. What did you say? I was reading instead of paying attention. My bad.
I said the top of A tier or the middle of A tier, not below Halfling.
Okay. So we've got me saying somewhere in A, and then Marshall saying high to mid A. JT, what are you thinking?
I am in agreement with A. I'm also unsure of where to put it. I'm gonna think through that as I talk, because tieflings also have, I mean, similar to Dragonborn, like they just have the rule of cool. Like a demon is cooler than a dwarf. The flight is really good. I like the flight a lot. Yeah, I really don't. I would put them probably middle of A, between either middle of A or bottom of A is where I would put them.
So I think we're gonna like take an average here and just plop them right in there, sandwich in between those two. That's the PHP races, everybody. We've got them ranked. I don't know what I expected, but this wasn't it. That's for sure.
It's a weird list.
Yeah, tell us what you thought. Tell us where we were wrong. Tell us what we had right. JT, is there another video they should check out on the channel?
I mean, we've done another tier list. We did a tier list of all of the classes, Core 12 plus Artificer and Bloodhunter, but not Mystic, because no one cares about it. So if you want to check that video out, if you're watching this on Twitch, go to our YouTube channel. If you're watching this on YouTube, there'll be a card coming up that will take you to that video.
We got anything else to say, Marshall? All right.
Well, actually, you mentioned it earlier. Sorry, about our stream for Heartwood Heist. If you want
watch
to
Heartwood Heist,
yeah, go watch Heartwood Heist.
See any fun races do all their fun racial stuff. And some fun magical shenanigans. Go watch Heartwood Heist.
Yeah.
Have a blast.
If you want to go see JT and I playing races that are not on this list, go check out Heartwood Heist.
To say, if you don't want to see these races,
let's say goodbye. Everybody, we'll see you later. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
See you later. Bye-bye.